Professor Akanbi is already waiting for us. We'll be discussing with us a learning theory that can be used to get our learners motivated. Okay? And one thing about online learning is that some people used to think that maybe it's another, cadabra one, of a thing. That there are no theory that are supporting online learning. You do a kind of trial and error. No. And so that's why some people, especially in this part of the world, they don't have confidence in our online learning experiences. If you are there during the last summit we had, you discovered that the Commissioner for Education, he came, and it was like, those who are on part-time, they are not as good as those, this platform, they are not as good as maybe those who are on the face-to-face and things like that. And we've come to realize that these are backed up by theory that are the product of rigorous research. Very many studies have been conducted, and that has validated most of the theory, that supports online learning and distance education. Now, coming to the next presenter, that is the person of Professor Seyi Akanbi from American University of Technology, that's in US. I actually come across, I don't really know how I got that flyer. The organization was trying to organize a workshop. They have a campus in Ibadan over there, the global campus in Ibadan. I was able to stumble on that flyer, and I attended. And since that time, he has created a kind of impression on me, and I think, bringing him down here to share experience with us will be a good thing to do. Now, he started that day. He told us his story, and that actually carried me away. And that also tells us the kind of environment we find ourselves in Nigeria. Now, he enrolled at the Federal Polytechnic, they're very close to us here, but he was unable to pay fees. And he was there till the last day the examination was starting. And he went to meet those who are there, and he was denied the opportunity to write that exam because he could not get the fees. And from there, he started doing this computer here and there, business here and there. Fortunately, he found himself outside this country. And today he has his PhD in, he will tell us more about that. I don't want to say that, I may not be accurate. And in his thesis, all of us here, thank God some of us here, we are educators from the Faculty of Education. We know this model of instructional design. That model is what we are used to. And he propounded another model that in a way challenging that model, telling us that that model was developed when we don't have this online learning experience in a way, e-learning. But we need to have another model that incorporates, technology in our instructional design processes. And that really, really got my attention. Now today we'll be talking to us about the persuasive learning and how we can, the nitty-gritty about that learning theory and how we can use that learning theory as a way of getting our learners motivated. I asked the last presenter, he's talking about creating fun and things like that. How are we going to ensure that that fun we are creating does not distract learners? Taking into cognizance our learners today that, they visit all this YouTube, they say they are learning, but at the end of the day, you see them watching this kind of films here and there and things like that. So I want to welcome Professor Akanbi to this workshop and also for your presentation. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the moderator. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we are hearing you. We are hearing you.
Okay, thank you very
Clearly.
much. I'm excited to have my presentation today, and I'll try my best to make sure that I don't waste your time and we can learn together. Uh, I know by the end of today, it's going to be my pleasure that I was able to attend OAU because this is an opportunity for me also to affiliate with OAU. So, a little bit about me. I'm not going to go into, some nitty-gritty. I'm a professor of practice. I've been forget my voice is like I have to wake up like 5 a.m. my time here, so it's still very early, and I'm trying to fully wake up. So pardon me. So, a little bit about me. I've been researching e-learning technology for a while. I'm a professor with University of District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. I'm also a part of the founders, the foundation members of American University of Technology. And we're trying to have a campus in Nigeria. We are working with NUC to have a very impressive and a very robust online learning in Nigeria. So today is not about me. So I'm going to focus on what we need to cover today without drawing too much attention to myself. Now, I will be speaking on persuasive learning. Persuasive learning is a new emerging concept in e-learning, and it's based on so many school of thoughts, but I'm going to try to be very practical as much as possible. As the moderator have said, persuasive learning is an emerging theory in the field of e-learning technology. By the word emerging, meaning that it has not become mainstream, it hasn't become something that everybody talks about or everybody uses. However, it has been used in diverse domain, like in online marketing, in e-commerce and mobile application development. So I'm going to be focusing on persuasive learning with an emphasis on online learning. So this is the first thing I'm going to mention. It is very important for us to have a clear understanding of the difference between a theory, a model, a method, and approach. All right. It's very important for us to have the difference, to understand, to distinguish between a theory, a model, a method, and approach. Because in many cases, one of the reasons why we don't know the best tool to use is because we don't know how to categorize some of these things we are familiar with, or we read, or we use, how to categorize them effectively. A theory is a body of knowledge that comes out of research, out of testing hypotheses again and again. And it has become a foundation of understanding that describes, explain, and predict. So a theory means that if I tell you this is a theory I'm using, and that I use that theory to design something or to conduct a study, if anybody uses it again and again, it's going to give us like the same results. So a theory is the foundational, it serves as the foundation of understanding, the body of knowledge that has been substantiated, well researched, well validated again and again. However, in most cases, theories are abstract. They are not something we can actually use by themselves. They just give us the ideas of the ideal situation. I'll give a series of theories. We have adult learning theory, or andragogy. Adult learning theory tells us how adult learns, how they prefer content to be distilled to them, how they prefer information to be provided. That is adult learning theory. We have a pedagogy. Pedagogy, the science of learning, how learning takes place here and there. We have a learning theories. We have a cognitivism, behaviorism, and cognitive behaviorism. So many theories are there in e-learning instructional design that we use. However, a model or a framework is a little bit different from a theory. What is the difference? A model, when a theory describes and a theory explains and a theory predicts, theories also suggest specific intervention. They suggest that for you to achieve this, you can use so thing. Whereas a model is a specific intervention or a specific combination of principles and guidelines that can be used. That is a model. A model, it is not a theory, but a model serves like a combination of so many tools, so many guidelines, so many principles and processes that have been formulated to help us to achieve something. So if the theory is the idea, it gives us the ideal world. The model gives us the specific tools we can use to get to the ideal world. If you look at the theory, in terms of somebody having the conceptual understanding or description of a beautiful house, it's just a beautiful house. A model will tell us some specific tools that you can use to actually have that particular house developed. That is a model. A method, on the other hand, is a specific technique that is drawn from a model to help us to achieve an objective. It is very, very important to distinguish between this. Why a framework, why an approach is the environment, the organizational culture, the guide, the principles, so many things that have been designed that enables that thing to function, or whatever models, whatever theory we are using, we operate them within the model of, within the approach. Let me try to explain using this imagery. Let's look at it like this is a man or a woman that wants to achieve something. We don't necessarily need to use instructional design now. Let's just try to cast our net wide. Let's be very broad in our imagination. You just want to achieve anything. Because of what you want to achieve, the theory is the bundle of knowledge. The things that have been substantiated again and again to be effective, that if you use them, is going to work. That is a theory, is the bundle of knowledge. Whereas a model is a collection of tools, toolboxes, guidelines, principles. Meanwhile, the method is a specific technique you need to use at that time that is applicable to what you want to do. That is a method. So it's very important for us to be able to distinguish this construct for us to know the best thing to use per time and how to use them. All right. Now, having discussed that, the approach is determined by the environment, the holistic environment that theory, model, and method operates. Let's use OAU as an example. OAU may use specific learning theories that have been substantiated to develop courses. There are so many instructional design models that OAU can adopt. From those instructional design models, OAU can also recommend specific methods, techniques for quizzes, for discussion forum, for grading assessment, and for feedback. So all those methods will now be applied individually. And in some cases, this environment, this holistic environment, can be determined by the organization, can be determined by the government, can be determined by the individual's preferences or society norms, mean that if we are developing courses in Nigeria, I am developing courses in America, the approach may be different based on the culture, based on the people, based on the grades, based on the student preferences. So these are very important for us to distinguish, for us to effectively know what to do and what tools to use. So a theory is the bundle of knowledge that has been well researched, well validated. Models a series of guidelines, principles, and procedures that also being researched that we can use to interpret the theory, whereas a method is drawn out of a model. A method or so many methods can be drawn from a model. And the approach is the holistic environment, the holistic style, the holistic situational awareness that we put into consideration when we are designing our instruction. This is very important. Now, this will now guide me into persuasive learning. Why is it important? Because it is important for us to know that persuasive learning design is an emerging theory. Because it's an emerging theory, what it means is that we're going to need some models for us to be able to interpret and to effectively use persuasive learning. Now, instructional design models, we talk about theories, models, and then methods, then approach. We have so many instructional design theories. I am not going to go into that. If you Google theories, if we have learning theories, social theories, the community of inquiry that Ms. Solani presented on, there's a lot of theories that have been there. And we have models. Again, models are guidelines, they are principles. We have a lot of models. We have an RG model. We have SAM. We have a backward design. I use backward design a lot. We have Keller Acts. Keller Acts talk about, attention, relevance, satisfaction, and the rest. Then we have a TPAC model, which is our technology, pedagogy, knowledge. Then we have the KD learning work, which is part of my own research, which we are going to talk about a little bit, the KD, the model. Now, let's look at a model like a recipe. If you want to cook a food, the model is a recipe, whereas the environment you are will determine how you put the recipe together. You can cook jollof rice, you can cook fried rice, and Nigerian jollof rice will be different from Ghana jollof rice. We don't have to debate which jollof rice is the best, but the environment will actually determine how you flavor your jollof rice. Or is your jollof rice a party jollof rice or a home jollof rice? So the approach will determine how they are being flavored. This is very important. So now I'm going to be talking about persuasive learning as a theory now. Persuasive learning as a theory, then we will move a little bit into a model that will help us to understand persuasive learning. Persuasive learning theory, it's not something that is new. However, it's a combination of so many bodies of knowledge. I can give you a little bit of the history. The original design started around 1953 from Yale attitude change. Yale attitude change is a framework. Then Professor Bandura continued the design in 1977 by creating a persuasive framework. Now, in around 1993, B.J. Fogg, he was a professor, he was a PhD student in Stanford, created persuasive design or persuasive technology. And that persuasive technology is the basis of most mobile application development, e-commerce, the websites, all the things we are doing today, they were based on persuasive systems. Now, bringing this into learning now, persuasive learning is an emerging theory. It has not been fully researched, but there are a lot of research, a lot of studies ongoing about it. So I'm approaching this now from the theory or theoretical standpoint. For a content or instruction or learning resources to be persuasive, it needs to have three entities or three factors. One, it should be able to recognize students' ability or their prior knowledge. What did they know before? That system, that training, that content should be able to measure, analyze, or predict what students already know for it to be persuasive. And at the same time, it should be able to understand student situation, and send regular triggers or regular hints or regular suggestions to them. The last thing is that if the system is able to recognize the ability, is able to personalize the experience, and because of that, it is going to give students what happened. Even because I am a student, everybody here is a student, we enroll in a class, and the student and the system or the course is able to measure what I know before, based on what I know before, based on what you know before, based on what other people know, which are not the same, is able to customize the feedback that is sending to us instead of a generic feedback. Is able to send us hints and suggestions. What that does is that motivates me. It enhances my ability and enhances my interest to stay in the course. And that is just what persuasive learning design does. Now, like I said, persuasive learning is a theory, is an idea, is abstract. It tells us that this is the ideal world. Remember, theory predicts, theory explains, and theory describes. And then theory suggests the specific appropriate intervention that we can use. But theories do not provide us with the solution. It gives us the ideal world. It gives us the way things are supposed to be. That is what persuasive learning design is all about. It gives us a specific framework, a specific understanding of what needed to be seen for e-learning programs, online learning, instructional design to be persuasive. It needs to be able to recognize learners' previous knowledge. It needs to be able to send triggers, hints, and suggestions, regular feedback, and it should be able to enhance and motivate learners to continue. This can be done through interactive interfaces here and there. We can get to that. Now, the goal of a persuasive learning design is to enhance the learning experience. That is the goal. And the reason why we have issues in online learning is because the experience in the classroom when a teacher, when an instructor is present, just like what Ms. Olanipeku said, the experience is different from when the instructor is not resident or is not in person. So the essence of persuasive learning design is to enhance the learning experience in an online learning environment. But when we are talking about learning experience, what exactly is learning experience? Learning experience is an holistic experience that is intentionally designed, carefully crafted to help the learner achieve a meaningful learning outcome that has been predefined. All right. So a learning experience is something it has to be holistic, it has to be intentional, and it must make sure that the learning outcome that has been predefined is achieved. That is the essence of the learning experience. Now, how do you know a content enhances learning experience? Number one, the learning engagement must be there. The learner must be satisfied, and there should be information retention. Learning satisfaction is very broad. What satisfaction means to me may be different from what satisfaction means to the other people. So that's why customization is very important to recognize learners' previous knowledge, ability to customize the experience and set them hints and feedback. Then that's when you can talk about learning satisfaction. I'm trying to move fast a little bit so that I can cover some of the things that I noted now. Now, again, like I said, if you look at instructional design as persuasive learning as a theory, the theory only tells us what we are going to see, the ideal one. Some of the things we are going to, that's going to appear or that is going to give us the assurance that persuasive learning design or the content you are developing will be persuasive, or the factors that will ensure that the content you are developing or your e-learning courses, they are persuasive, is that they have to be very attractive. By attraction, it means that it needs to arrest learners' attention. It has to arrest learners' attention, and it must sustain their interest. Meaning that the principle of design, the principle of interactivities, the principles of the principle of engagement must be there. And the second thing is that it has to adapt to different learning style. If 10 students enroll, whatever their preferences is, there should be the opportunity to adapt to students' different learning styles, learning preferences, and it must ensure their acceleration. It has to make sure that students are able to progress faster in what they know and they spend more time in what they don't know. Remember, these students or these people enrolling in an online program, they are coming from they have different background, different knowledge, different experiences. There are some things they already know. So the system or the courses must give them the opportunity to move faster in what they already know, and they'll be able to spend more time in what they don't know before. Those are the things okay, I like feedback. Before I move to the second phase, so I want to pause a little bit. If you will have any questions, moderator, I don't know how we're going to do it. I'm checking I should be able to see the chats if there's any now, if there's any questions. So before we move forward, before I add more to it, I want to make sure that if everybody is on the same page. So in essence, this is the theory of persuasive learning design. Now, I'm going to be moving on to the model that we can use to make sure that whatever we have developed is persuasive. So before moving to the model, do we have any question? Anybody? Any question? Okay, excellent. Please, moderator, I don't know how you can help me take that question, please.
Okay. We'll just hand over the mic to them. They can ask directly, and you can attend to it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, sir.
Your last statement excites me and attract my attention. You say the learning, maybe the instruction, what you want to teach, must take care of the different backgrounds. Are you following, sir?
Yes, sir.
Hello, I want to give an example with mass communication. Maybe we have a student with mass communication and the topic is mass communication. And you have somebody who is already a journalist. That means he must have some background knowledge of some of the things to be taught. How do you take care of his background and that of somebody who has not practiced journalism before? That's my question.
Excellent question. If I tell you that immediately, that is the end of the presentation. So, but let me take one more question. I know a lot of people will have similar questions, so that I can answer them together. Next question.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
My question is on disability recognition. I know that if we are talking about ADDIE, the A stands for assessment.
Analysis.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, is there maybe something like an instrument through which disability recognition could be done? You know that when you use ADDIE, there are instruments through which you can do, the preliminary assessment that you need to do before you go to development. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The question is also very similar to the mass comm, so I'm going to try to take them together. Any other question?
Okay, you can go ahead, sir. Attend to the questions.
Thank you very much. Now, if there is what they call the ladder of learning. So there are a lot of debates about who started it, who didn't start it. So I'm not going to go into the debate. The ladder of learning categorizes learning into four. You have unconscious incompetence, Unconscious incompetence is that you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know that thing exists, right? Then you have a conscious incompetence. Now you know that you don't know this thing, but you know what that thing is. Okay, Mrs. Timotokwe, Oteyola, give me 1 second. I'll take your question. So you have an unconscious incompetence. You don't know that this thing exists. You don't know what you don't know. Then you have a conscious incompetence. Now you know that you don't know this thing, but you know what that thing is. Then you move to the next stage, which is a conscious competence. You started learning about it. Now you are conscious, but for you to be proficient, for you to do it effectively, you have to consciously work on it. Then you get to the level of an unconscious competence. It has become your second nature. You can do it without blinking. Let me give you an example. If in like 180 years, 130 years ago, nobody knows about driving, like driving, there's something called driving because there were no cars. At that time, there were charts and horses. So people, if you relate that to driving, people don't know that there's not anything like driving. Now, there are a lot of people now, they know that driving exists, almost everybody in the whole world, but they know that they don't know how to drive. That is a state of conscious incompetence. You know driving exists as a skill, but you don't know how to drive. That is a conscious incompetence. Then you started learning driving. You are now consciously competent. You put your hands on the steering. You put your eyes on the road. And if somebody say hi, you don't want to look to the right or to the left because you are still trying to master it. You are competent, but you are consciously competent. Then the last phase is when you are unconsciously competent, you have gotten to the level that you can drive, you master the road, you can be driving even though it's not safe, you can be on your phone and you will still be able to talk and have conversation because it has become your second nature. Now, when we are talking about ability recognition, what we are talking about ability recognition, which is the same thing as somebody having a class of a lot of people with people who are already journalists and with people who do not have any prior journalism experience. But they know that they don't have prior journalism experience, but they know that journalism competencies exist. So what you need to do, which I'm going to talk on a little bit, is to do what they call task analysis. All right. You have a particular course. I'm going to be using introduction to media communication as an example. Introduction to media communication is journalism 101 in Nigerian university system. Now, what you do is that you break the whole thing into, you do a task analysis that a journalist, this is what a journalist that takes this course are supposed to know within 16 weeks of this course. That is what they're supposed to know. You now break it into pieces by pieces. Like this is week 1, everything they need to know in week 1, you break those things also into the smaller components. I'm going to give you some framework to follow to do that. Now, in week 1, what you are looking for is proficiency and competencies, right? All you have to do is to let them take a pre-assessment. If people take the pre-assessment, and you develop the pre-assessment in such a way that it measures competencies, not that they just do A or B. That's not assessment. I'm not talking about quizzes now. I'm talking about task analysis-based pre-assessment, which I may not be able to cover because of time, but you do what they call task analysis-based pre-assessment that they'll be able to take. When they take that pre-assessment, the pre-assessments, we categorize them into different levels, whether they are at the level of unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, or they are proficient. Then you now align the module, which we are going to talk about a little bit with alignment, to make sure that if somebody's level is at the conscious competence, these are the recommended modules that the system will give to them. If somebody is at the unconscious incompetent, these are the level and the content that will be given to the person. And if somebody is at the Unconscious competence, they already know this thing. They are just coming to get the validation. You let them move ahead to the topics that they don't know before. That is how to recognize prior knowledge. Mrs. Somebody raised up the hand online. Okay, Mrs. Timtope Oteyola, do you want to go ahead with your question, please?
Yeah, I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, I'm sorry for saying Mrs. I'm very sorry.
You're welcome, sir. Prof, sir, the first stage in persuasive learning, like we made us to understand, is ability recognition.
Yes.
And I am just thinking, how do we recognize their ability based on previous knowledge or based on their entry behaviors? In entry behavior, like you are rightly saying about task analysis can give us information about their entry behavior. But if it is about previous knowledge, I am just thinking that you taught the student may not really have that grasp when you give task to the student. So my question is, do we base it on previous knowledge? Because when you were discussing with us, you made mention of previous knowledge or on task analysis. That's my question.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. We need to be able to distinguish between behaviors and competencies. Now, I don't want to go deeper into so that we don't get distracted from the key things we want to. Now, behavior is a construct that's what people hesitate. That is what you want to see in a long time. That is behavioral change. For example, if you have series of lectures like this, like we are having now, over a period of 3 months, some of the behaviors we want to see from the instructor is ability to facilitate, to develop, to prepare, or to manage effective online learning. That is the behavior that we want to see, right? But what we are talking about now is competencies. Competency is competency is how you want them to do something. Or the skill level you want them to be. That is the competency. The level at which you want, the proficiency level that you want people to be. That is competency. Remember, if somebody goes through a university from 100 level to 400 level, at the end of 400 level, we want them to exhibit certain behavior or certain cognitive level. But each of the courses combines together, prepares them, and then fine-tunes them. It's like they are being produced like like an equipment to the finished products, right? So that is what you want to see. What we are now saying is that individual courses should have models, should have modules. The individual modules to also be broken down into smaller particles so that if you have 5 topics in a week that you want to cover, you have to break this topic down into the granular details, and you develop specific task-based or scenario-based assessment that will enable you to understand that this student has mastered this space. Let's use driving as an example. If I want to teach you driving now, supposedly, if I know how to drive, right, I want to teach you driving. I have to break it down into what they call the terminal objective and the enabling objectives. The terminal objectives is that at the end of day 1, let's say we're going to have a 5 days training. At the end of day 1, I want you to be able to identify key aspects of driving skill at the end of day 1. So I want you to be able to distinguish between gear, between clutch, between steering, and between headlamps, and between brakes. That is what I want to cover in day 1. Now, that is the terminal objectives. Now, these terminal objectives needs to be broken down into what they call enabling objectives, meaning that I have to look at it. If everything I want you to cover in day 1 is understanding the basic tools or the basic terminologies, matching brake and everything, I have to break them down into individual components. For example, what are the components of a brake? What are the best practices of matching a brake? That is one thing. What are the components of a gear? What happens in gear 1? What happens in gear 2? What happens in gear 3? What are the components of a clutch? How does a clutch work? How do you add gas to the clutch? So I have to break them down. So if I now want to teach somebody how to drive, I have to create a scenario-based activities that measures each component, not the entire module. Now, I can now measure that, okay, you told me you learned driving before in your dream, right? You told me you learned driving in your dream. You already know how to drive. All I have to do is that give you a scenarios-based activity to test you, tell me how a clutch works, right? If you are able to convincingly, there's going to be the rubrics. I don't know if I'm able to get there. A rubrics for you to be able to effectively measure. If I'm able to measure that, okay, you have the competencies, you have gotten to the level of the you have become competent enough to understand clutch. I will not need to waste time on those clutch. I will move to you understanding the gear 1, what gear 1 does. I know nobody uses a manual car anyway, but let's assume we still uses a manual car. And so I'll be able to tell you, okay, gear 1, gear 2. Then if I test you scenario-based or task-based scenarios or questions to explain what each gear does, and you are able to master the competence, then I focus on the break that you don't know. That is how to recognize previous knowledge. And we can also use this analogy in various settings, across various disciplines. What we have to do, I'm going to touch on a little bit. It is called the concept of modularity, which I'm going to touch on a little bit. I don't know how much we're doing with time. So did I answer the question? You can just wave if the questions are answered. You can just wave. Okay,
yes,
good.
The question is definitely answered. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Any other question before we move on? So now, if we now understand, we are able to identify the prior knowledge, what they know before, we are able to measure what they know before. The next thing is to send a custom. What that does is that it provides some level of customization. You'll be able to send them, what is it called now? Hints, suggestion, and triggers that aligns with them specifically. And what that does is that it motivates learners, it makes them interested, it keeps them engaged, it makes them to get the best of the content. And it's not going to look like intentional punishment, right? Because they will know that I'm focusing my energy on what is important because I'm not going to waste time on what is not important. Now, these are the things that must be seen, like I said, in a course to be very persuasive. It has to be very attractive. Attraction must be there. It has to be fully designed, well designed, follow the principle of design. This is the principle of design. I'm not going to go into that. It is called the principle of information design. I believe there'll be an opportunity for us to distill that. And this is adaptability right here, meaning that it has to be flexible enough to adapt to various students, various learning style. And at the same time, it has to give the learners the opportunity to move ahead and focus on what they don't know instead of focusing on things they already know before. Now, let's now talk about this. I told you that we talk about theory, we talk about model, we talk about method, right? So if persuasive learning is a theory, what is a model that can be adopted to help us to develop programs, online courses that is persuasive, right? So, I provided, if you remember the beginning of the conversation, I talked a lot about different models. Let me see if I can quickly go back. Different models. We talk about Agile model, analyze design development. We talk about SAM. We talk about backward design, Killer, TPAC, and the CADE model, right? So these are all instructional design models. But like the coordinator rightly said, some of these models, they predate online learning. So some of them do not fit perfectly into the modern online learning. So that's why I'm proposing this CADE model. CADE model is something I developed, I came up with. It's from the word cascade, right? And the word cascade, if you can Google it, it's meaning to build something upon the other gradually. That's why this something has cascading effect. So it's based on cascade. Now, it's based on when you do effective content authoring, deployment, and evaluation. that is a model that can help you to achieve persuasive learning design. Then from the CADE model, then you can have what they call we can take a method out of the CADE model. A method is a specific approach in the CADE. Now, what is CADE? Without spending too much time, because I don't think we'll be able. These are entire course, like, so there's no way I can cover them within 1 hour or 2 hours. But what it means is that you take your contents. I'm going to be very practical now. In Nigerian university system today, there is what they call CCMAS, right? How many of us are we familiar with CCMAS? Let's wave. If you're familiar with CCMAS, just wave. Okay, perfect. So CCMAS is the grandfather, is the origin of the content they are going to teach, right? CCMAS gives you the guideline. It gives you the, the objectives that you are going to do. Now, that is the content. But for you to make the content to become persuasive, you have to take each objectives. We talk about learning objectives, right? I'm not going to go into that. I think Mrs. Alaniko mentioned it a little bit. So you take each learning objectives, and you have to break each learning objectives into what they call enabling objectives, just like what I explained the other time. One learning objectives, there should be about 8 to 12 learning objectives in a course, according to CCMAS. Now, each learning objectives needs to be broken down into enabling objectives. Now, each enabling objectives now needs to have specific instructional goal that you want every student to attain at the end of the objective. Let's take mass media 101. If the first objective is that at the end of this course, our 100 level undergraduate students will be able to describe the basic principles of communication, right? Sender, recipients, and feedback loop and the environment. So you have to break each of them down into granular details. That is the content. When you break them into granular details, then it will be easier for you to assess each component individually. There are methods, there are rubrics, there are tools to use to do all this. I will not be able to cover them. Now, once you're able to break them down, then you get to the level of authoring. Authoring is just the development. When you use different software or PowerPoint to design this thing, to put them into various videos, and there's so many granular details we have to follow using our micro learning principles. I will not be able to cover that. Then you have to deploy them using a learning management system or CMS, content management system. I will not be able to cover that. And you have to be able to do evaluation. So now under authoring, I'm going to spend a little bit of under authoring to focus on a specific method, and that is the method of a modularization. All right. So, or modularity. It's modularity is a software development term that says that every component must be standalone. It has to be by itself, and the combination of so many modules should form an entity. That is just what the basis of a modularity is. The same way we use modules for the courses in university, every topic also should be modularized. That is just the simplest basic form. Every topic must be modularized. A topic is feedback, as an example. Feedback should now be broken down into different granular details that form effective feedback. For example, effective feedback, they have a STAR, they use a STAR approach: situation, task, action, and the results. That is the hallmark of effective feedback. So you have to break everything down into situation. So once you do that, it is easier to combine all of them together, just like these building blocks that you can see on the screen. Let's now imagine your course is a house that you want to build. What we are saying is that there should be everything in that house. There should be one block for everything, and that block stands by itself. And that block itself, it has its own dimension that you can measure. And all the blocks combined, they're going to form the house. And at the same time, they have to be neatly arranged to be very beautiful. They have to be very beautiful, and the students can take the block they want to do part-time. One block can be broken into two, and you can measure, you can assess, you can determine each block per block. And if for whatever reasons, the one block breaks, it's easier for you to replace that block without having to destroy the entire house. And the essence of the block, everything, is that you put everything on a very strong foundation, which is your theory, right? And you use the model as your pillar, and you use the block as the building block that's going to make you to have a effective construction. That is the end of my presentation. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, so let me take questions, and I think I have some other things that I want to share. We have this program we're going to do is starting in next month. I will let the coordinator decide. I'll give 4 slots to an OAUDLC. We can give you 4 candidates so that you decide to who is going to attend. It's going to be hands-on, it's going to be rigorous, it's going to really go deep. We're going to really actually, as in, dive deeper into each of these building blocks, how to build them, how to develop assessments, how to develop all the building blocks we've mentioned. We're going to go deeper into all of them. So I'll be expecting coordinator to submit the names of the people that will be selected. Then we can take it up from there. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I will be taking your questions.
Thank you so much for Professor Akanbi for the presentation. I just want to take our questions now so that we can have a deeper understanding of what has been presented. Okay? Yes, 1, 2. Do you have anyone online?
No, nobody online.
Nobody online now. Maybe I start with Professor Egbedogun. Please.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, it's not a question, it's just a very brief comment. And to say, okay, on a jocular side, David Akanbi, I have a professor, he's late now. His name is David Kunle Akanbi. Do you know him?
Sorry, I'm hearing that for the first time.
Okay. Your name attracted me so much. I remember that we used to call him David Akanbi also very well. Thank you for the presentation. I only want to make a comment on this issue of objectives, because for every content anyone is developing, I'm sure that that issue of objective is very key from the beginning to the end, especially when you are doing the initial development and also to the point of evaluation. You mentioned the issue of specific objectives and enabling objectives. And I was reflecting also on what Gaye said, Robert Gaye, when describing, prerequisites, enabling objectives, performance objectives, and the rest like that. And I want to share this, that if you have a specific objective as simple as at the end of this lecture, students should be able to drink water. The action verb there is drink, and the object is water. It is important for teachers to be able to break that into enabling objectives. Objectives that will allow or that will enable students to be able to perform that specific objectives. And it is as simple as 1. It means that your enabling objectives will be as 1. Students should be able to recognize a cup. 2, students should be able to recognize the source of a potable water or drinkable water. 3, students should be able to scoop water or collect water. I don't know which English is correct. Then 3, students should be able to put the cup filled with water in their mouth and should be able to sip and should be able to drink. At the end of that, your student is able to drink water. And I am sharing this so that everyone developing any content will know that the issue of objective statement is not a joke. It may look as simple as I have described it, but when it comes to creation of content, especially for online, creation of content, it is a serious issue. And we have to be as clear, as specific, and as direct as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. If I can comment on that, before the next person asks the question, if I can comment on that, Prof, thank you very much for that. There is what they call a performance triangle. If you see any courses, whether online or in person, that achieves any objectives, that is the concept of a performance triangle. The performance triangle is you look at one triangle, one side of the triangle, you look at the objectives. The other side of the triangle, you look at the content, instructional materials. The third side of the triangle, you look at the assessment. Now, like Prof rightly said, if you cannot define your objective accurately, then whatever content you are providing is going to be a mismatch. And if the content is a mismatch, if you now write your assessment, it doesn't align with the objectives, it doesn't align with the content, you are just giving students a punishment. And as a matter of fact, they should sue us as instructor if we do that. So it's not just writing the objectives only, we have to write the objective with the degree of performance using a Bloom taxonomy. What are the degree of performance that is expected? For example, would they be able to is it going to be at the lower level, just explain, identify, list, or at the higher level, they'll be able to describe or synthesize, or at the very high level, medium level, demonstrate, or the highest level synthesize? We have to be able to do that for us to be able to help the student to learn. And we have to make sure that the content also aligns to various levels, and that we have to make sure that the assessments also aligns. That is going to have the effective one. Thank you very much, Prof, for the contribution. Next question.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I want to appreciate all those things that you are teaching us. And I want to appreciate the contribution just made by Professor Egbedokun. Actually, in education, we believe that when you are stating an objective, your objective must be stated in a behavioral way. Because by the use of action verbs.
Yes.
But if you say at the end of the lesson, students should be able to eat food or drink water, it is ambiguous. And to some extent, that cannot be achieved. So the objective you want to achieve within maybe 40 minutes lecture must be attainable, must be achievable. And that's why we make use of action verb. And I equally want to appreciate what you have just said. You talk about Blooming taxonomy of education, which has to do with making use of the action verb that are related to the content of the topic. I mean, the topic that are related to the topic.
Yeah, thank you. Let me quickly comment on that before the next person. What Prof said is not different from what you just said, sir. The only difference is that the where you need to use Bloom taxonomy is when you were describing your terminal objective. The terminal objective is the overarching objective that what you want students to be able to do. Now, for the actions or the behaviors that you want them to exhibit, right? You may not necessarily say the student will be able to eat. You will say student will be able to demonstrate how to eat. Now, out of the demonstration is when you will now name what Prof said, which are enabling activities. You know, recognize a cup, right? Being able to move a cup, being able to draw water. Those are enabling activities that will help the student to demonstrate. And those are the things that the instructor will see. They will be able to grade that the student are meeting the proficiency. So it's just how to break them down into pieces. Thank you for your comment.
All right, thank you, Prof, for the presentation, the wonderful presentation. My question is, you spoke about the theory of persuasive learning. You told us also about the method and the model, but you've not talked about the approach. So I think if you can just mention something about it before you round up the session, we'll appreciate that, sir.
All right. That's a very good question. Like I said, the approach is, you can look at the approach like, I like food, so let me try to bring food into this. If you want to cook jollof rice, right? Jollof rice is jollof rice, but the cooking approach that people use is, the cooking approach you're going to use is determined by so many factors. If you are working in a restaurant, does that restaurant have specific style or specific principle or best practices that have been put in place? Or if you are cooking this jollof rice in your house, do you have specific method that you prefer, that you use? Even though jollof rice, you still need rice, you still need pepper, you still need all those fancy things to make it. But what are the specific consideration you are going to use? Now, in instructional design, the approach can be determined by the organization. For example, all this concept of the fancy things we are talking about, the OAUDLC can decide their own specific approach that will guide the instructors or the facilitators that, okay, if you are developing persuasive design, these are the things we want to see. For example, we want all our logos to be at the top, or we want all our logos to be at the bottom. These are the colors that we want to use because this is the color of OAU. Or these are the way maybe we are going to have just 5 questions, or we're going to have 7 questions. Maybe the passing grade is going to be 10, or the passing grade is going to be 9. Those are the environment through which the framework or the model will function. It can be determined by the government. It can be determined by the individual. For example, whatever you want to do in the university system in Nigeria, the overarching approach is still based on NUC's, what they call it, tech-enabled online learning. Meaning that you cannot have 100% online learning is a tech-enabled. So NUC have already given us that specific consideration that whatever we want to do, you have to put into consideration. So that is the approach. The approach is just the overarching house, or what we can call the, I'm trying to go back 1 second. That we can fully understand. So approach is not, how do they call it now? It's not a prescription. It's not something you can prescribe specific approach. Individuals will come up with their own approaches, or the organization can come up with their own approaches. And the approach can even be based on the societal norms where you operate. For example, I teach in big universities in America. Every university has their own specific approach that can be used. I am not going to take the approach of one school to another. I have to design these ideas, considering the best practices, the guidelines that the organization or the industry has provided. Does that make sense to us?
Thank you. Maybe the last question is this may likely be out of what you have your presentation, but I also think I should take advantage of your presence today. Now you speak about one of the elements of CADE design is authoring. Have you discovered that most of the LMS, maybe the model we use, doesn't really give room to authoring? Maybe what you do there is just to do a kind of digitization or model. Now, we just saw another directive coming from federal government with a third fund wanting to, make Blackboard available. As a matter of fact, there is a training that is scheduled in OAU here for Blackboard. I want to ask, I know that Blackboard is fastly used in America. Does it allow this authoring of a thing? Because we want to have an idea before we embrace this thing. What's your thought about that, sir?
Thank you very much. That is a very good question. And let me find a way to answer the question without trying to spoil some people's business. So, let me say this. When you are talking about authoring, right? Let's look at authoring as, how to make actual, what they call knitting. What they call knitting, right? So if you want to knit a clothes, you have the wool, you have the needle, as in that will make the thread and everything. By the time, or crochet, right? By the time you put it together, you have a beautifully made, piece of clothes, right? That is how to picture authoring in your head. So authoring is simply means that a system that allows you to bring different components, merge them together to form an entity that can be consumed. All right? But Blackboard is not an authoring software. So let me just say that categorically. Blackboard is a learning management system. So in the old world, as of today, there are the mostly used learning management systems today in the old world. There are two. I don't know which one is mostly used, but it's just the Blackboard and Canvas, right? Blackboard and Canvas. If you go to Harvard uses Canvas, Stanford uses Canvas, MIT uses Canvas. Other universities, they use Blackboard, all the university. So now there's a third one. It is called Desire to Learn, D2L. So after the Blackboard, after the Canvas, the next one is on Desire to Learn. The name of the company is called Brightspace. So all of these management systems, they are not authoring applications. They are just another version of module. The difference is that module is open source, right? It's open source, it's a collaborative effort. You can customize them, whereas Blackboard is an enterprise software as a service. Enterprise software as a service that it has more functionalities and is more robust. And what enterprise applications do is that they have what they call API. API means that it is easier for them to communicate with so many other systems. And for you to have API with module, you have to do a lot of work before module will be able to work with other systems. Whereas the capability that will make a system to work with other systems will use to board and Canvas. That is just the difference. The content authoring, PowerPoint is a very simple content authoring if you know how to use PowerPoint. Content authoring that it puts all various interactive entity, audio, video, graphics. He put them together like when you are knitting clothes, a thread and everything, to produce an outcome. The outcome can be in form of a SCORM outcome, or it can be in form of HTML. You can now upload this into a learning management system or a content management system, CMS. So, and the difference between LMS and CMS is that LMS tracks and completion. CMS doesn't track completion. That's just it. I hope that is explanatory enough.
Thank you so much. I want to appreciate you for honoring our invitation. And not only you honor it, you did it in such a way that we are also encouraged. For the training, we have always been your fans in a way. There's hardly one you organize maybe physically at Ibadan that you have not have representative. Even this flyer, I've shared it on our various groups, and I think some people they have been making attempts to register. We also want to thank you for at least giving us first space, and that's free. And I hope others aside that those four that may want to make some, fulfilling all the criteria. The criteria will also be accommodated. So I want to say thank you once again, and can we just give him a round of applause as we. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the program, and we'll see you next time. We'll see.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah.